Everyone knows that The Simpsons has a habit of predicting the future, but what if I were to tell you it wasn't the only psychic cartoon on the block?
Bruce Jenner is a man.
No, Brian. That's what the press would have you believe, but he's not. Bruce Jenner is a woman.
Yeah, pretty much the type of prediction you'd expect from Family Guy. Just like in Season 4's Don't Make Me Over, where we get an early peek into one of Hollywood's craziest scandals, all wrapped up in the one storyline Hollywood loves best, a good makeover journey.
Some lucky, hideous woman will be transformed by our makeover magicians into someone of value to society.
So the episode kicks off with Meg, who's doing her usual thing. And by that I mean awkwardly crushing on boys from the nerd table. This time her target is Craig Hoffman, who, let's just say, isn't too thrilled about her advances.
How about a movie?
I don't go out with dudes.
Thus proving once again that there are in fact worse things that they can say than no. With her self-esteem crushed into a million pieces and scattered into the wind, Meg turns to her parents for a bit of reassurance, which was her next mistake.
Mom, Dad, am I ugly?
Oh, of course not, sweetie.
Yeah, where'd you get a stupid idea like that?
Maybe the Griffins aren't so bad after all.
Craig Hoffman.
Craig Hoffman said that? Well, he's a sharp kid. You might be ugly.
Or maybe not. And like my good old friend Steven would say,
emotional, damn it!
of course Meg cries in response, at which point Lois decides to put on her mom pants and take Meg to the mall, because how else do you fix your teenage daughter's self-esteem than surrounding her with toxic beauty standards? One shopping spree later, and Meg is surprisingly feeling good. At least till she basically commits manslaughter.
How do these jeans look?
I'm not too entirely sure this is murder. Now might be a good time to call in the experts. I'm so glad you called me. Welcome to No Villains Are Safe. Go check the channel out. It's pretty cool. Anywho, while all this is going on elsewhere, Brian and Stewie are up to no good as usual. You leave a dog and a toddler unsupervised in a mall and things get weird pretty fast, pretty crazy, one $8 bet later and we got Stewie running around and nothing but skin.
I've escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement. Help me! Ha! I am so outrageous.
Outrageous and shockingly correct, because flash forward to 2017, pun intended, and we have the real Kevin Spacey battling some serious misconduct allegations. Safe to say the writers either had quite the scoop on Spacey beforehand, or just had one too many martinis that saw them peek into the future or something. I hear martinis can do that. From that eerie prediction, we pivot back to Meg, who, thanks to those hideous woman to valuable citizen gurus, has basically become a whole new person.
Take a look at your daughter.
Golly, Goldberg makeover magicians, all right. Boy, do I need some of that magic right about now. So Meg is now stunning, which of course means that for the first time in forever, she's turning heads for more positive reasons, I guess. Elsewhere, Peter and the guys are living their musical dreams, killing it at the Drunken Clams karaoke machine, and one standing ovation later, they decide it's high time they form a band, which of course needs no explaining just how terrible of an idea that is. But hey, it wouldn't be Family Guy if we don't witness Peter crashing and burning, which is just so happens to be the case when Peter's band, and I use that term loosely, lands a gig at the Quahog Correctional Facility.
1, 2, 3, 4!
Oh my God, we don't know any songs. You shut off the stage!
Your new prisoners aren't impressed by tone-deaf cover bands. Just as the prisoners are ready to riot, the rest of the Griffins jump on stage to save the day. One look at Meg and the whole prison is, shall we say, pacified? I don't really...
Grab a guitar. Brian, take the drums. Here, Stewie, play with this.
Mom, can we please just get out of here?
From this point, we're pretty much treated to a musical fever dream. The Griffins land themselves a record deal, Meg becomes a diva, because that's apparently what talented blonde artists do, and things spiral all the way to Saturday Night Live, where we get an extremely awkward cameo from Jimmy Fallon.
Hey, why did you come hang out in my dressing room?
If you guessed camera, well then you're spot on, because as it turns out, their little entanglement was caught on tape. Meg, as you'd expect, flees in shame, and Peter gets to beat the crap out of Jimmy Fallon.
What do you think you are, Carol Burnett? You think because she did it, it's okay for you? You haven't earned what she's earned, buddy. All right, now where's the guy who slept with my daughter?
Yep, that's the bumbling idiot we all know and love. Next we head over to Turban Cowboy, an episode that I'm pretty sure landed the writers on the government watch list.
Tell you what, let me call Horace and tell him to get our table ready.
Peter, did you just...
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
That's one way to beat rush hour traffic. So our story starts with Peter and the gang loafing around the drunken glam, all looking about as lively as a broken jukebox, which of course is prime time for Peter to come up with one of his usually crazy ideas. Yet surprisingly, he keeps things sane and suggests the guys go skydiving to spice things up. Naturally, they all agree because, as we all know, peer pressure and alcohol make quite the mix. But surprisingly, they don't all end up as street pizza on the first jump. Except, of course, Peter can't just be a casual hobbyist. He's going to be Quahog's resident daredevil.
Pull back my chair ever so slightly. Daddy's home.
Lois tries to point out to Peter that maybe the whole crater and the sidewalk thing isn't exactly good for his health. But since this is Peter Griffin we're talking about, he ignores her advice and keeps going until he's literally hanging by his butt on a Vegas skyscraper, which, unironically, is just another Tuesday on the Vegas Strip.
Look at that douchebag who got stabbed in the butt!
Told you so. And so, after one too many close encounters, Peter finally lands in the hospital, at which point fate introduces him to Mahmoud, and somehow the two of them click, despite Peter being this.
No, this is just a taqiyya. It's a traditional Muslim prayer cap.
Oh. Hey, you know who'd look funny wearing one of those? The Monopoly guy.
Yeah, this is gonna be a very long episode. So Peter gets discharged, and the first thing he does is invite Mahmoud to meet the guys. And what could possibly go wrong with a devout Muslim surrounded by alcohol listening to Quagmire, right? After one boob-related query too many, Peter and Mahmoud ditch the clam for, check this out, the chaste camel. Stereotypical names aside, the place actually turns out to be Peter's sort of vibe. And by the time Peter's done experiencing Muslim culture firsthand, he pretty much does what you'd exactly expect him to do.
So wait, let me get this straight. Sweet hat, obedient wife, you, sir, have got yourself a Muslim.
So Peter dives headfirst into Islam, complete with the Middle Eastern attire, soccer fanaticism, apparently it comes with the territory, and a grocery list that somehow includes a cobra. Before long, Mahmoud invites Peter to a special Muslim get-together, and since this is a show where stereotypes tend to be creeping around every turn, it turns out to be a secret terrorist meeting, with Peter none the wiser.
Oh my God! Everybody down! So are these toys just like to take?
So Peter returns to the Drunken Clam to hang out with the boys. One recap of his day later, and the guys at the Clam suspect something fishy is up. But instead of, telling Peter to run for the hills, Joe, who's always itching for a case, pushes Peter to stay undercover and gather intel. Since Peter has the discretion of a bull in a china shop, the whole operation, if you could even call it that, ends up in smoke right off the bat.
Sorry, can you repeat all that? I just had an itch right by my microphone.
Microphone?
I mean, even Homer did way better when he was asked to get close to Fat Tony, just saying. Naturally, terrorists aren't huge fans of being spied on, and so they lock Peter up in a van full of explosives and force him to drive to the Quahog Bridge. Thanks to his natural disposition,
Okay, you're good to go.
he manages to evade all the checks and onto the bridge, where he gives it one more shot, trying to convince Mahmoud not to blow them up to smithereens.
We are the proud nation where someone can shoot up their entire workplace with a thing, and then the next day nobody talks about banning that thing.
Mahmoud decides to go on with his plans to blow up the bridge anyway, and since time-wasting villains are the best kind of villains, Mahmoud stares Peter down long enough for Joe to swoop in and save the day. Mahmoud gets arrested and Quahog is safe, until Peter does what he does best.
Peter, did you just...
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
All never hurts to have a plan B, I guess. Now, the episode itself aired a month before the 2013 bombing in Boston, so you can already tell it wasn't exactly a TV favorite by the time the bombing happened. And to make matters worse, there's one cutaway in the episode that just, it raises very many questions.
Holy crap, this is awesome! I haven't felt a rush like this since I won that marathon.
And yes, that was the Boston Marathon. Sure, it is what you'd expect from Family Guy leading up to the annual marathon, but that alongside it being an episode about terrorists kind of screams prediction, or just a coincidence. But if you thought that was a mere coincidence, then the next prediction in We Love You, Comrade should leave you with no doubt that the writers of Family Guy do have some psychic juice.
There's Brody Jenner. God, what a douchebag. I can't believe that came out of Bruce Jenner's vagina.
And yes, this aired years before Bruce transitioned. But before we get into the details of that prediction, we should cover the full meat of the matter first. So it all begins with Brian receiving the worst possible news that Jillian, his ex, is getting married. And since Brian has a talent for crashing out of relationships in a blazing dumpster fire, everyone else in the house gets an invite except for him. Brian, of course, isn't too pleased about that, and doesn't help that he isn't over Jillian either. And so by 7 a.m., he's already into his third bottle of booze. Stewie steps into the kitchen, takes one good look at Brian, and of course he has to taunt him at his lowest because that's just what baby genius geniuses do. A few jibs later, and Stewie ropes Brian into going to dinner with Jillian and her fiancé. And oh boy, was that a mistake.
Wow, Derek, that's pretty good.
He also speaks mandolin.
Hey, what luck, huh?
Wow, sweet.
Cat-like reflexes, speaks French and Mandarin, has quite the package. And yes, Brian checked him out.
Oh, come on!
The result is as you'd expect, with Brian at the bar drowning his sorrows in scotch later that night, at which point he meets reality TV star Lauren Conrad. One drunken conversation later, and Lauren decides that she wants a slice of Brian Griffin. They hit it off, and next thing you know, Brian wakes up in her bed, which of course causes Brian to start panicking because, you know, he isn't one for the limelight, and let's just say there's quite the spotlight on Lauren.
Does Lauren Conrad have a new beau? An anonymous source has the answers.
Oh yeah, I know that guy. His name's Brian Griffin, and he definitely boned Lauren last night.
Who needs enemies when you have a friend like Stewie Griffin? Beyond Lauren being too popular, the other problem Brian has with dating her is the fact that she's a blonde, which from his experience, aka his time spent with Jillian, means she's probably dumb enough to be hit by a parked car. And so determined to end things, he heads over to Lauren's place for the good old breakup spiel, only to discover that she's actually not an airhead.
Oh, hi, Brian.
Wow, hi.
Yeah, he's already geeking. At first, this revelation is a relief for Brian, and so he makes things official with Lauren. But then he invites her over for dinner, at which point it begins to become pretty obvious that her intellect might just be a bit too much for Brian to handle.
Well, Lauren and I had a great time today at the Art Museum. There was a special exhibition of rare Monet paintings and...
Manet, honey.
What?
It was actually the Manet exhibit, not Monet. But no big deal. People make that mistake all the time.
Oh, right.
Brian quickly spirals into an existential crisis because heaven forbid someone outclassed him intellectually. And so he does what any male with a bruised ego would do in this situation. He tries faking being smarter than he is by rambling about a book Lauren has read about 100 times. And the result is not exactly what he had in mind.
Oh my god, you're so cute when you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, wait a minute. What the hell does that mean? Are you saying I'm not smart?
You don't have to be. You're adorable. Like those calendars that have monkeys and clothes.
Look, why don't we talk about this in the morning? I want to finish that book.
Oh, that's it. He's ruined. He's ruined. It's over. That's it. His career, it's gone. It's done. Now, feeling like the Jillian of the relationship, Brian decides to end things with Lauren. Surprisingly, Lauren doesn't flip out, but instead sees the situation for what it really is, which is that Brian is clearly not over Jillian. And because apparently her life isn't chaotic enough, she offers to help him win her back, which goes about as well as you'd expect.
Will you please take me back?
Brian, no.
Well, at least he tried. But man, would that be awkward to see live. So Brian's rejected again. The wedding continues and Jillian's off with Deshawn, leaving Brian right where he started, swirling a cup of martini while pondering his life choices. And what's even worse, he can't rebound to Lauren because he gave her worms. Now, somewhere within all that chaos was a scene involving Brian and Stewie on Lauren's set, which is where we get the infamous Bruce Jenner line from earlier, along with this gem of a scene.
Bruce Jenner is a man.
No, Brian. That's what the press would have you believe, but he's not. Bruce Jenner is a woman.
Spoken with conviction, and 9 years later, turns out to be right on the spot. So it's time we move on to more, shall we say, darker predictions, starting with the one found in Season 10, Episode 22.
We're meeting at the Dog and Cat and Bull and Whistle and Fiddle and Cock and Pig and Wolf and Carriage and Fife and Other Wolf.
But I need you to stay and have a chat with Collingsworth.
It'll all make sense as we progress, I think. Anyway, so Family Guy viewer mail number 2 is a special episode that features more or less on what-if scenarios based on viewer fan mail. At least that's what the premise of the episode is. And so we're treated to 3 mini-plots, with each one becoming more unhinged than the last. Kicking things off, we have Chap at the Manor, which essentially asks what if Family Guy was a British show, which without even thinking hard about it, is every bit as ridiculous as you'd imagine.
I look on you with favor. I look on all of you with favor.
Shut up, British Meg.
So Peter and the guys, Crooked Teeth and all, are at the British pub where it's announced that the Queen is passing through town. And so we get a high-stakes game of Find the Royal DNA. Why? Because Neville, British Peter, but somehow even dumber, believes he's related to the Queen. And naturally, the only way to confirm this is by stealing a lock of her hair. So to make this happen, Peter, or should I say Neville, hatches what I can only describe as the most British heist ever, a fake barber's chair set up along the Queen's parade route, which obviously doesn't work, and so he's left to chase after the Queen.
Queen! Queen, give me some of your hair! Come on, Queen, don't be a bitch!
Get us away from that lunatic!
So he does just that, and because Family Guy loves real-world parallels, the Queen's carriage crashes into a tunnel. Yes, that tunnel. Dark, Yes. On the nose, absolutely. Neville still manages to get the lock of hair he was chasing after, I don't want to imagine how, and runs off to have it tested. A few days later, and the results are in, and of course, he's not of royal blood, because not even Family Guy is crazy enough to make him a monarch. And just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, we take a hard left down crazy lane in the next mini plot.
Yeah, you want a Band-Aid? No problem, turkey. Come on down to Obama-Mart. The price is free, but your ass better vote for me.
Ha! Political with a twist!
So Fat Man and Robin kicks off with Peter watching a roast of Robin Williams. And since Williams is Peter's favorite actor, he gets even more press than the man being roasted and runs out of the house to shout at God. Which in the world of cartoons is not exactly the brightest idea, especially if it's raining.
I wish everyone was Robin Williams!
Boy, that looks enticing. Yeah, this is nice.
So Peter wakes up at the hospital where he realizes that his little wish actually came true, as everything he touches now turns to Robin Williams. At first, Peter's loving his newfound power, vowing to use it responsibly, a vow he pretty much tosses out the window the moment he jumps out of the hospital bed. And so before you know it, he's turned basically everyone in Quahog into Robin Williams. The only problem with that is, well, let's just say that some people are much left better the way they were.
You're not Lois!
Brother got the Midas touch. Can't even control his ability. Naturally, he spirals into despair, realizing he's created a nightmare in which he can't escape. And so he tries everything to find true escape, including a gun, which turns into Robin Williams, at the bottom of a cliff, which also turns into Robin Williams. The story ends with Peter cutting off his own hands to avoid transforming anyone else. Too little too late, and honestly, quite the eerie ending. Fast forward to 2 years later, and the real-life Robin Williams ended his own life on the same day the episode aired in the UK. And yeah, I highly doubt that those two events were actually connected, but that is an insane parallel. Unfortunately, still on the topic of death predictions, we move on to Season 5, Episode 18, Meet the Quagmires.
Man, it's been a busy day. Dick Cheney, the chairman of Halliburton, shot Supreme Court Justice Scalia in a hunting accident, and the bullet went right through him and killed Karl Rove and Tucker Carlson.
And that's our prediction right off the bat. And while you're all still busy Googling who amongst those fine gentlemen have gone to rest, let's dive into the episode and see what it's about. It all begins at the Drunken Clam, where Quagmire is filling the boys in on his latest misadventure. Apparently, he's discovered the elusive female fourth hole. What? And between that and his other stories, Peter begins to feel like he's missed out on the single life. It's at this point that Death casually swings by the Drunken Clam, just in time for Peter to beg him for a favor.
Hey, David asked you. I'm in B-18 again.
What are you, hot?
Death initially resists because, time travel requests aren't exactly part of his job description, but when a women's basketball game comes on TV, he folds like a cheap lawn chair and sends Peter back to the 80s, because apparently enduring Peter's nonsense is still better than watching the game. So Peter's hurled back into the 80s right at the time he met Lois as a pool boy, and since he's a crash and burn first, think later kind of guy, he blows off the date he has planned with Lois to go party at St. Elmo's Clam, which, in case you're wondering, is the Drunken Clam back when it was still respectable. So Peter gets to live his teenage dream, which apparently involves lip locking with TV star Molly Ringwald. Death shows up sometime later. Peter gets sad, but the show, as they say, must come to an end. And so he follows Death back to the present, only to find out that it's not the present he remembers.
Who the hell are you? What are you doing in my bed?
Peter, it's me. Molly, your wife?
Molly Ringwald?
Turns out his little Molly fling rewrote history. Quagmire married Lois, Al Gore is president, and crime is practically non-existent thanks to healthcare, education, and wait for it, tight gun laws. Coming full circle here with Peter's quote from earlier, huh? Still, Peter wants his old life back. Lois is his wife, the crippling mortgage, Stewie's infant homicide attempts, basically the whole package. And so he runs back to Death asking for yet another favor.
Death! Oh, thank God you're here. Listen, you gotta send me back in time again so I can marry Lois.
Man, it's been a busy day.
Death, of course, isn't exactly pleased with Peter's request, especially since the new order of things makes his work easier since there's less death happening, except for the ones we saw him list earlier, and yes, I'll get to the prediction in a moment. So Peter continues to nag Death, and he reluctantly ships Peter back again and again and again, because apparently one do-over isn't enough when you are a thick-skulled buffoon. Between Cleveland luring him to a party or Peter being himself, he manages to fumble the bag with Lois to the point where Death gives up on him and dips.
Screw this! No more mulligans! You're on your own!
God damn it, Brian, what the hell am I gonna do now?
Oh yeah, and Brian is also part of the whole saga because, you know, a man's best friend and whatnot. Anyway, with no more do-overs left, Peter heads over to Lois's house to try and smoothen things over with her, which of course ends poorly, no thanks to him standing her up, and so Peter is left with no choice but to go full-on skater mode and chase Lois to the school dance, which is apparently where her and Quagmire kissed and became a thing. And at first, it's looking like a case of too little too late, as Lois still wants nothing to do with him. But just as Quagmire's about to seal the deal, Peter lands a haymaker on that chin the size of Rhode Island. He swoops in, kisses Lois, and just like that...
And hey, let's just all be grateful that things are completely back to normal again. Who ate all the pecan sandies?
Everything's back to normal. Well, that was easy. As normal as it gets with Family Guy anyway. As for the episode prediction, well, the answer you've been waiting for is Antonin Scalia, who died in his sleep 9 years later after a hunting trip. Not quite the hunting accident death described, but close enough to make you wonder if Family Guy keeps a crystal ball in the writer's room or something. Speaking of balls, pause. It wouldn't be a Family Guy list if we didn't add some American football into the mix.
Boom! Oh, come on!
My God, 10 losses in a row?
This whole season's been one long bad dream.
In 3 acts of God, Peter and the guys seek out God to ask him to give the New England Patriots a break. And of course, since we're talking about the divine, it only makes sense that some predictions get thrown into the mix as well, which we'll get to in a moment. But for now, let's dive into the episode. So Peter, Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland arrive at 7 a.m. on Sunday for the Patriots game. Fast forward to a 10th consecutive loss, and the gang find themselves nursing their disappointment at where else? The Drunken Clam. At which point, they catch the post-match interviews featuring some pretty interesting comments from the opposition.
All thanks and praise goes to God. He really won this one for us.
3 similar interviews later, and Peter concludes that God is betting against the Patriots, and so he rallies the guys to go find God and demand that he stop meddling with the Patriots. They start exactly where you would expect any God hunt to begin, at the local church in Quahog. After crashing a baby funeral, dark, Cleveland suggests that they chase down Carrie Underwood, you know, based on her hit song, Jesus Take the Wheel. A lead that once again proves to be a dead end, at which point the guys pretty much decide to go on a world tour.
In Greece, it was commonly held that one could speak to the gods from the top of Mount Olympus. We should probably go there.
What do you mean gods? There's more than one?
Yes, Peter, Greece is polytheistic.
And now they're trying to catch multiple gods here. What is this, Pokemon? So they visit pretty much every place on Earth where anyone has ever erected an altar, only none of those places have brought them any closer to any deity. Except for Greece, where they ran into Kronos, who gave them a gift basket. Apparently he's the god of that too. And no, we can't rewind the clock back for the Patriots, because apparently all he does is tell the time. Plus, going back in time won't exactly change the outcome of those games. Now I'm starting to sound like a nerd. Moving on. Dejected, the guys sling back into the Drunken Clam to drown their sorrows in beer, and that's when they get a visit from Death. No big deal, just Cleveland's show getting killed off again. Peter then seizes the moment and convinces Death to take them to God. Obviously not the smartest request, but Death isn't one to dwell on the details. Or lack of, in this case. So he takes them to see God, without ending them, of course.
Oh, hey, I'm God. Welcome to heaven.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Now face to face with God, Peter wastes no time demanding the gods steer clear of all Patriot games. Well, God denies any involvement at first, but eventually admits to having a grudge against head coach Bill Belichick. Apparently the man has never smiled, even after winning 3 Super Bowls, which doesn't exactly say grateful. It is at this point that God strikes a deal with Peter and the guys.
If you make Belichick smile, I'll let the Patriots win again.
Okay, you're on.
Sounds easy enough, except Bill is basically the human definition of stoic. Peter and the guys quickly go to work to get Bill to smile, but despite throwing everything but the kitchen sink to get a grin, he doesn't flinch a bit. And so the boys finally give up on saving the Patriots. But just as they're about to pack it in, this happens.
We gotta get to the hospital anyway. Our friend Joe here has to have his fluids changed every 72 hours or else he swells up and his eyes turn yellow.
What was that?
Oh my God, Joe, quick, tell him more about your sad life.
A few sad stories later, and they finally crack Bill's iron face. Task complete. God keeps his word, and the Patriots are back in action. Oh, and Peter also squeezes in one extra request.
What's happening?
Don't look at her. Don't look at her. It's okay, just go with it. It'll all be over in a second.
As for the prediction, well, if you guess the Patriots winning the Super Bowl for the first time in 10 years, then you're spot on, as they go to win it a year after this episode was aired. I might need Family Guy to do an episode on Arsenal. Turns out 3 acts of God wasn't the only time Peter and his crew acted like deranged fanboys, as we see in Season 6's Back to the Woods.
I love Barry Manilow.
Oh my God, he's the best!
I have everything he's ever recorded!
Me too! In my car!
And surprise, surprise, the episode once again begins the Drunken Clam. Man, I feel like every single episode we talked about so far has started the Drunken Clam. Am I wrong? It just feels like that. Anyway, the boys hear that Barry Manilow's coming to town, and naturally they pretend they're too cool to care, but within minutes they're screaming louder than teenage girls at a Taylor Swift concert. Fast forward to Manilow's show, and Quagmire gets called up on stage, where the star serenades him like it's prom night. And there's just something about Glenn's massive jaw that honestly makes the scene just hilarious.
Oh, Quagmire, you kissed me and stopped me from shaking, and I need you today, oh, Quagmire.
And there's also the fact that at the time of this episode, Manilow was thought to be straight. 9 years later, he'd come out as gay. So, hey, I guess this still counts as a prediction. A very early one, but it happened. Anyway, back to the episode. So the boys return from the concert that evening when Peter realizes that he's lost his wallet at the concert, which of course means that every haircut, movie rental, and six-pack of beer is on hold for the foreseeable future. However, his lack of financial muscle turns out to be the least of his worries when his credit card bill turns up in the mailbox with a $16,000 debt. Naturally, Peter and Brian slip into detective mode, mostly Brian, and after being forced to sniff Peter's butt, you know, the wallet being there in his back pocket, Brian is able to trace the credit card to the unlikeliest of people.
Oh my God, it's you!
James Woods!
Hello, Peter. I've been expecting you.
All right, maybe not the unlikeliest considering the history he has with Peter, but I digress. James Woods is back. And big shocker, getting locked in a crate for years only fuels your desire for revenge. Woods ditches the restaurant with Peter's wallet, and since Peter and Brian both skipped Identity Theft 101, they just turn around and head home. Which turns out to be a very big mistake, because when both of them get home, they find James Woods chilling in their living room, wearing the same oversized white shirt and green pants that Peter normally wears. Awkward conversation ensues, at which point Joe is called to the house to settle things once and for all, and since this is Joe we're talking about, well, see for yourself.
Home?
What are you talking about? This is my house!
No, this house belongs to Peter Griffin, and that's me.
Driver's license, social security card, passport, title to the house. This puts me in a tough spot.
And just like that, Peter gets evicted from his own house, while Woods becomes the new Peter Griffin. He redecorates the place, slaps his face on every photo, leashes Brian outside like a satin lawn ornament, and because you can never be too sure about how identity laws work, keeps a shotgun handy for intruders. Which of course is Peter, who tries to sneak back into the house disguised as Chris's new friend, Scooter, and for a hot second he almost pulls it off. But there's only so long a hat worn backwards can fool a celebrity.
You know, Scooter, we don't allow hats at the dinner table.
Oh, my bad, Mr. G.
Dad, no!
Aha! I should have known! Get out of my house right now!
And there's the fact that Peter is not exactly the brightest make-believe kid on the playground, except for that one time he was Lando Griffin, but that's a very long story, so let's just stick to this one, shall we? Okay, so Peter gets chased out of his own house again with a shotgun, causing him to retreat to a shabby hotel room to mope. Luckily for him, Brian, who'd been left outside unsurprised, follows him back to the hotel and offers Peter some solid advice.
Wait a minute, Peter. If he's Peter Griffin, then that means you can be James Woods.
That's a great idea, Brian! If I was a famous movie star, I wouldn't even want my family.
No, Peter, I'm saying you can do to him what he did to you. You can ruin him.
That, my friends, is why he was outsmarted in the first place. Brian, bless his patient dog heart, explains the situation to Peter as slowly as he can. Since Woods is busy messing up Peter's life, Peter is free to pretty much do the same. After all, identity theft is a two-edged sword, and no one wields weapons as carelessly as Peter does. So they sneak back into the house to link up with Stewie, who is surprisingly cooperative and offers to forge the documents they need. One toddler craft session later, and Peter Griffin is now the new James Woods. Peter then hits the town posing as James Woods, and since he's already an expert at dragging his own name through beer and mud, it doesn't take long for him to do the same to James Woods' reputation either.
Well, Dave, I have a hilarious new movie coming out on HBO next month. It's all about 9/11. The movie's called September 11th, 2000 Fun.
No!
James, that sounds unbelievably offensive to Americans.
Yeah, that should do it all right. Pissed off, Woods tracks Peter down to the Drunken Clam. He challenges Peter to a brawl. Peter accepts and chooses a nearby ally as the venue. And the rest, from that point, is history.
Peter, I'm here. Where are ya? Ooh, a piece of candy. 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 Ooh, a piece of candy.
Back in the box again, and this time for good. Guess it pays to listen to Brian. And you know who else should have listened to Brian? Well, her name starts with a letter that pretty much sums up the result of her actions.
I can't believe you guys. Don't you realize you're contributing to a potential public health disaster by not vaccinating your child?
That's exactly the point. My child. He's my child, and nothing matters more than his well-being.
Oh, God, this is going to be a Lewis story, isn't it?
So Season 15's Hot Shots is basically a sneak peek into 2020, as the 2016 episode showed us a world riddled with a pandemic and stubborn anti-vaxxers. It all starts in the Griffin house with the family watching TV and Meg running downstairs with a bat in tow. However, instead of calling an exterminator, Peter decides he's the perfect guy to handle it, and so we're treated to failed attempt after failed attempt till he eventually injures one of his kids' arms.
Oh, now I want you to live.
What is it? Ow!
Peter and Lois rush Stewie to the hospital. Luckily, it's just a bruise, but since the doctor is not about to let them leave without getting some syringe action going, he seizes the opportunity to suggest updating Stewie's vaccinations. However, one read of the vaccination pamphlet is enough to get Lois second-guessing, so she decides to go home and just think about it, which of course leads her down a rabbit hole filled with every anti-vaxxer chat room she can find. And before you know it, Lois goes from a concerned mom to basically the leader of the anti-vaxxer movement.
Right. Come on, Peter. I've got all the stuff for our anti-vaccination rally.
I don't believe this. It's bad enough you guys aren't vaccinating Stewie. Now you're trying to convince other people to make the same reckless choice?
Lois goes to work spreading the gospel of anti-vaccination, and with Peter, a master of propaganda, by her side, well, nothing and no one can stop them.
Vaccinations cause autism, paralysis, and even death. Fact. Vaccinate rhymes with meth. Would you let a doctor do that to your kid?
Like, how do you even argue a point like that? By the time Peter's masterpiece airs, Quahog is fully on board the anti-vaxxer train, a train with a one-way ticket to Pandemicville, as all the kids in town have now contracted measles. It is at this point that Lois finally sees the error of her ways, oh, and also Peter's ways, because he was in on it too. Unfortunately, this revelation arrives right after Peter had destroyed the town's supply of vaccinations, because when Peter sets his mind to something dumb, he sees it through.
Gotta get to the hospital and get Stewie vaccinated.
You kind of destroyed all the vaccines. All right, what else?
I mean, if you're gonna ruin public health, you might as well do it with sass. So the entire town is put under lockdown, at which point Stewie freaks out about his lack of vaccination. No thanks to people dropping all over town like flies. He decides to bolt out of town, and since nothing is ever straightforward in Family Guy, his exodus out of Quahog comes with a few twists and turns. First, he bumps into future Stewie, who might be more of a junkie than a time traveler, then tries to evade the police by swinging on a bridge. Of course, things go sideways, and Stewie nearly plummets to his demise, only to be saved by none other than Sean Penn.
Vaccinations are a human right.
Great, just what I needed, a lecture from liberal Hollywood.
This whole thing has been a lecture from liberal Hollywood.
In the end, the Griffins get to count their lucky stars, and also count the fact that 150 Quahog residents kinda died. Turns out living in the same town as the Griffins reduces your life expectancy by about half, go figure. Yet one could argue that there are worse fates than a reduced lifespan, like the one Meg was staring at in Season 10's Lego My Mego.
Oh my god, Dad! Are they gonna take me? I'm so scared.
Meg? Meg?
So Meg's misfortune pretty much begins where you'd normally expect, and no, it's not at home, and no, it's not at the Drunken Clam. It's actually at school, where the entirety of the gym class sees Connie D'Amico rally the entire class against Meg.
All right, ladies, let's pick teams for dodgeball. Connie, would you like to be a captain?
Sure, I pick everyone except Meg.
Fair enough. Go!
Tired of being everyone's punching bag, Meg jumps at her friend Ruth's suggestion to study abroad in Paris. After wrangling permission from Lois, because Peter's opinion is about as relevant as an expired coupon, Meg and Ruth jet off to Paris, leaving Quahog and its madness behind. Hours later, they land on what looks like the perfect postcard city, but then they decide to share a ride with some random French dude, and what's worse, stop the ride in front of their new residence. Naturally, said rando instantly calls up his shady associates, and before you can say bonjour, Meg and Ruth are whisked away, leaving Peter on the phone feeling helpless.
What I do have is $2 and a Casio wristwatch. You can have one of them.
Drakkar Noir.
These guys are serious. Lois, Meg's dead.
Peter, always a beacon of hope, really. Back in Quahog, the FBI swoops in, delivering what has to be the worst motivational speech ever known to mankind. If she's not found in 96 hours, she'll vanish forever. And as if that wasn't bad enough, then there's this.
We've got to hurry!
Sorry, we can't begin our search until she's been missing for 96 hours.
Oh my God! My baby!
Yeah, there's a pretty grisly trait over there. Usually we just end up burying framed pictures.
Taxpayer money hard at work, folks. Brian overhears the doomsday clock they put on Meg and decides it's time for him and Stewie to step up. They hop on the next flight to Paris and quickly get to work tracking Meg down, starting from Ruth's place. Turns out Stewie's much more equipped than the FBI, and thanks to his recorded snippet of the kidnapper's voice during Meg's call with Peter, he's able to track the kidnappers right to their den. After a brief skirmish, well, maybe not brief, but you get the point, they run upstairs to the kidnapper's lair where they find a bunch of girls handcuffed to beds.
Stewie, I don't see Meg anywhere.
Brian, look!
Oh my God! Meg!
What the hell?
Where'd you get that hat?
A girl gave it to me.
And as it turns out, that girl, being Meg of course, is now on her way to a slave auction house. So they head over to the auction house where Stewie has the brilliant idea to disguise himself as merch. They end up separated at the venue, and Brian, dressed up as an Arabian prince, is forced to buy him back for $500,000. And it's at this point that the jig is up.
That was so fun.
How will you be paying?
Oh, I don't have any money. Can we work it out, maybe some other way?
Wait a minute. Something doesn't smell funny here. You're not Arab!
So they get captured, and since we're in the realm of cartoon villainy, they both get chained up to a rusty pipe. A few tugs and they break free, knock out the guard, and storm off to find Meg. Only it's a case of too little, slightly too late, as although Meg is fine, she's now on her way to her newest owner. They chase Meg's captors onto a yacht, and might I say, one of the most epic sequences of Family Guy history, which turns into a shootout on the deck with the captors. Meanwhile, Meg is below deck meeting her new owner, which turns out to be an Arab prince who bought her to be his son's new wife.
Fair goddess, it is my hope that you will agree to be my wife, but the choice is yours. If you say no, I will have you flown back to your family on our private jet. But if you say yes, I will spend the rest of my days making your every wish come true.
I mean, we all know what Meg was gonna choose. But the moment they lock lips, Stewie ends the fantasy with a well-placed bullet. He then quickly wipes Meg's memory, yay for convenient Men in Black mind wipe technology, leaving Meg with no knowledge of her fiancé taking a dirt nap. And as a final gag from the Family Guy Grim Reaper, it's revealed that poor Ruth is alive, minus her tongue. As for the prediction, well, during Stewie's auction, one of the men who put in a bid was none other than Brett Ratner. 5 years after the episode, and he's out of Hollywood after being accused of sexual harassment. But our next prediction is also once again in the realm of sexual harassment, brought to us by season 14's The New Adventures of Old Tom.
Good evening, Quahog. I'm Dallas Portland.
And I'm T. Homie with the news in your mouth!
What the hell's he doing?
Hopefully my midlife crisis is just as colorful. We kick things off at the Quahog Mall because apparently Peter has used all of Lois's underwear as makeshift slingshots. I mean, what else are you gonna use women's underwear for, really? Naturally, Lois is ready to leave after restocking her drawer, but Peter decides that it is the perfect time to turn into a video game junkie. Lois gets angry and ditches him at the mall, and by the time Peter comes to it, he's all alone. And for some reason, he can't take a cab back home. Maybe he's broke, maybe he's forgotten the way back. Either way, he ends up stuck at the mall at night, and what could possibly go wrong in that scenario?
Holy crap! Wait! Don't close the mall! Like an actual Amtrak train, this is dangerously out of control! That's legally defensible, by the way. On your screen is a list of actual rail disasters.
Everything is the answer. One night of that, and he's on the local idiot gets trapped on the mall train news, at which point the new star of Quahog 5 News in the name of Dallas Portland makes his grand debut. A few minutes on the airwaves, and pretty much every housewife in a 10-mile radius is suddenly fanning themselves. Peter, feeling jealous that Lois and her gal pals are swooning over Dallas, heads to the drunken clam to drown his sorrows. Standard protocol for Family Guy men, by the way. There, he bumps into an equally depressed Tom Tucker. Turns out Dallas has managed to upstage every male in Quahog, including Tom himself. And this is where the prediction comes in, with Peter comparing Tucker's downfall to that of Charlie Rose, the talk show host. And while the cutaway involved Rose covering the news while heavily drunk, his downfall would come but a bit differently a year after the episode aired due to multiple allegations of sexual harassment. Anyway, back to the story. Peter, in his clearly finite wisdom, decides that the best way to help Tom is by making him cool again. And apparently cool equals midlife crisis stunts, so they strap a GoPro to Tom and try to make a skateboarding video. Which, surprisingly enough, starts off pretty well. Only this is a show where random things tend to happen a lot, so we get a bear attack. So fast forward to the next news broadcast, and Tom debuts his fresh new young guy look. And because his whole act screams epic cringe, plus he did bleed himself on live TV trying to get a tattoo on his face in real time, Tucker ends up being relieved of his duties on air. With his job gone, Tucker finally hits rock bottom. Peter goes to Tom's apartment to apologize, but Tom's too busy throwing himself a pity party. Actually, scratch that, he's throwing himself off the building. Yeah, Tom's on the roof ready to jump, and Dallas arrives, of course, to cover the suicide for sweeps week.
Look, Tom, before you do anything crazy, you should know one thing. I have that exact same bathrobe.
Hey, Tom, the camera's gonna be on you in a second. Before you jump, could you just hand me this microphone? Like you're passing me the torch?
What the hell are you doing here?
What am I doing? Getting an interview with a crazed jumper on the brink of suicide. This is huge!
Good to see that textbook narcissism isn't off journalism curricula yet. In a dramatic twist, though, Peter flips the script and threatens his own suicide, effectively giving Tom an exclusive interview to show the world he's still a relevant newsman. Tom talks Peter down, and in typical comedic timing, a pigeon spooks Peter, causing Tom to fall off the roof. Fortunately, he lands on a group of unsuspecting bystanders. Not that to say that out loud, that's actually a tragedy. But anyway, the next day, thanks to the high ratings from Tom's near-death coverage, he gets his old job back.